Oh, hey. Sorry I'm a little late. I just flew in from work. And you know what, guys? I think that I deserve a snack. And that's kind of what you're here for, isn't it? You're here to watch me make myself some sort of delicious, tasty treat. Well, it's fall, so I'm in the mood for something apple. But you know what? I'm not really down for taking the time to make like an apple pie or apple turnovers or anything like that. It's too much work after work. So you know what? I think that I have just the recipe that's quick and easy, but packed with apple flavor just in time for fall. That's right, kids. Today we're gonna be making apple scones. Today on the Blue Wizard Bakes. So I've already started, kids, by preheating my oven to 350 degrees. Now it's time for us to get everything in its place. So this way we have everything we need, where we need it, and when we need it. Let's make some magic, kids. Perfect. So now I just need a little hand sani, get myself cleaned up, and we are ready to head off to the races. Inside of my large bowl, I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And to that, I'm going to add 1/3 cup of just regular granulated sugar and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then into that mix, we're gonna spice it up a little bit, add some of those fall flavors. I'm going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and of course the perfect spice that always goes well with apples, cinnamon, teaspoon of cinnamon. And then to round off our dry ingredients, I'm gonna add in 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now I'm just gonna take and whisk those dry ingredients together to make a nice homogeneous mixture. And that's our dry ingredients done. Now we need to move on to some of our wet things. So here I have a small cutting board and my single apple. Now the nice thing about this recipe is that the only thing that we're taking off of this apple is the core. That's it. So we're gonna keep the skin on and everything. And the way that I like to core my apples is instead of like digging out the core and everything like that, I just cut my apple into quarter-sized pieces and then go on a downward angle and just cut out the core. Easy peasy. Once I have the core cut out of my apple, I just want to take and cut the apple into small 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch pieces. So I'm going to take each quarter and slice it in half, and then take that and cut it into 4ths, and then chop up into small little dices. If you guys watch Anne Burrell on Food Network, she always uses the motto, slices, sticks, dices, slices, sticks, dices. That's basically what we're doing here, okay? So we do our slice, we do our sticks, and we do our dice.
Don't be ridiculous.
Perfect. Now we get to throw our apples in with our dry ingredients. Get in there, you little ones. Perfect. And the next thing that we have to add in is something that I actually prepared real quick right before we started, and that is our butter. With recipes like this, where you like the butter to be nice and extra cold, and you want your pastry to be a little bit flaky, I like to take and grate my butter on the large side of a box grater and then throw it into the freezer for about 15 minutes, and that gets your butter to the nice perfect consistency for using in recipes like this or in pies. It takes like 30 seconds to do, and that little bit of prep work makes a big difference. So I'm just gonna scrape it off the plate, into the bowl. And now I'm gonna toss all of these things in the dry ingredients just to get them coated. Make sure all the little pieces of butter are separated and they're not clumped together. And now we get to add in the big kahuna of wet ingredients, the thing that's gonna bind everything together, and that is buttermilk. We're gonna add in 3/4 cup of buttermilk. And I'm gonna start tossing with the spatula first, just to get everything starting to get incorporated. But then I'm gonna go in with the tools that God gave me, my hands. Get everything nice and tossed, incorporated, evenly combined, and into a dough. You want to try to not handle it too much with your hands because you don't want to melt all that butter that we took 15 minutes freezing. So now that we have a nice homogeneous dough ball, I'm gonna take and press it onto the surface of my counter. I'm just gonna spread a little flour over the top so it doesn't stick, and then pour out the mass onto the surface. All right, and then I'm gonna press this shaggy dough that I've created, and I'm gonna press it into a square shape. And you want it to be about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick. So not like a pancake, but also not like a cake. Press it in nice and tight. All right, perfect. Now I'm gonna give my hands a quick rinse, and then we'll be back to cut them into scones. Okie dokie. So now let's get ourselves cutting. I'm just gonna use the same knife that I used to cut my apples, and I'm going to cut my square in half, and then cut it in half the other direction. So now I've cut it into quarters. I'm gonna take then each quarter, and I'm gonna cut it in half like a triangle. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, but going the opposite direction. So at this point, I've cut my scones into 16 equal pieces. So now I'm just gonna take my scones and place them onto a cookie sheet that I have lined with a silicone mat. But you could just use parchment paper if you don't have a silicone mat. Not a big deal. Now the scone that I have right here is kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. It might not have gotten enough wet ingredients. I'm just gonna take and sort of press it together and just try to make a rough triangle shape out of it. See if I can do it. And it just goes to show you, most mistakes in the kitchen can be fixed. All right, look at those beautiful scones. Look at that. Fantastic. So now all that's left to do is bake them. I told you this recipe was quick, kids, but they are gonna have to wait a little bit to bake. We're gonna do about 25 minutes total in a 350-degree oven. So I'll see you back here when that's done. Okay guys, so I just checked on the scones and they are almost ready to come out of the oven. But while we're waiting for them to finish up, I just wanted to take this time to remind you that if you're not subscribed to my channel already, what are you waiting for? If you like this video, please make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell for notifications, so this way you're notified every time that I post a new video. Also, why not go and slap that like button down below, so that this way my channel can grow and this video will get it to as many people as it possibly can. If you'd like to follow me elsewhere on social media, you can be sure to find me on both Facebook and Instagram at JoeTheBlueWhiz. If you like this recipe and you want to make it, you don't have to keep watching the video over and over to get the recipe. All you have to do is head down to the link in the description box below this video, or just head straight to bluewizardfood.com. And of course, if you have any questions or ideas for future videos, why not leave me a comment down below? I'm pretty good at responding to comments, and I love to communicate with you guys that way. So go ahead, leave a comment. My nose is saying that those scones are done. Let's check it out. Here they are, my beautiful scones. Now I'm gonna let them cool on the pan for about 5 minutes before I remove them to a cooling rack to cool completely. But y'all already know that I am not a patient person, so I'm gonna be throwing this rack into the freezer so that these can cool a little bit faster. Now, while those are chilling, I'm gonna make a little glaze for the top of our scones. So inside of this bowl, I have 2 cups of powdered sugar, and to that, I'm going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then lastly, I'm gonna add in 1/4 cup of water. And I'm just gonna take and whisk those things together. Just want to make sure to work out any lumps of powdered sugar. Now, as you guys can see, this makes a really kind of a pretty thin glaze. When I first started making this recipe, I started with the thicker glaze, but I didn't like it. I thought it was a lot of sugar, just way too much. And so I decided to go down to a thinner glaze. But if you are a thick glaze kind of person, then just take the amount of water down to 2 or 3 tablespoons rather than a full 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons. And that'll make the glaze a lot thicker for you, and it'll work out the way that you want it. But like I said, I like the thin glaze for my purposes. All right, let's go check and see if those scones are cool enough yet. So all told, these were in the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes, and now they are just the right temperature to dip. So I'm just gonna take one scone at a time, turn them upside down, and dip them into my glaze. Let the excess run off a little bit, and then throw them back on the cooling rack to drip. I'm just gonna do that for every scone. Yummy, look at that. And there you have it, guys, my delicious apple scones. Now, of course, you could wait for the glaze on these to dry completely before you had them. But again, impatient, and I'm kind of hungry. Remember, I made these for my after work snack, and I'm kind of, ready for my snack. So I'm going to pick one up and have a bite, even though the glaze isn't dried yet. It'll be even better once the glaze dries. It's like you took an apple pie and threw it into a scone form. It has a perfect balance of sweetness, tartness from the apples. It has a great scone texture, nice and still moist, not dry, but it holds together like a biscuit. Guys, oh man, I really impress myself sometimes. I really do. Ladies and gentlemen, you have really got to go and test this recipe for yourself. And if you do, make sure to let me know by posting a photo and tagging me either on Facebook or Instagram. Well, kids, that's all that I have time for here today on The Blue Wizard Bakes. Remember, you don't have to be a professional chef or even a wizard in order to make magic in your kitchen. Bye now.